more customization, more, abilities, whatever the case might be as you move on through a game. I'm not sure I like that much. Maybe that's just because I'm old and I remember how things were and how things used to be. When you bought a game and you got a full artistic movement, there didn't need to be more thrown onto that concept to make it better. It didn't need to happen. So anyway, I just wanted to say I thought that was a great conversation. DLC limitation is definitely an impact upon which the game industry has definitely felt the effects of piracy, or has had the perceived feeling of the effects of piracy, if that makes any sense. So they feel like that pirates are limiting their ability to make money, therefore they have DLC limitations. One of the responses to that has been to change to this always purchase model. And for better or for worse, guys, that's going to be there for a very, very long time. All right, let's see. Ninto talked about something that many of you mentioned, which is that older games that don't make a lot of money seem to be an easier in to piracy. And I think that's, by and large, very true. So many of us that have games that we love that are very, very old, that are as old as we are, right? We want to go play that game because maybe we missed the experience, maybe we're trying to regain the experience, or maybe somebody told us that this game is fantastic and that we should really give it a shot. You're not going to be able to get the access to the technology to buy those games through legitimate means is very difficult at this point. Is very difficult. Some would say even impossible. And for some systems and some games, depending on how far you're going to get out there into some of those older games, it's just not going to be plausible. You cannot get these systems to work. You can't get the games. It's just impossible. So then it becomes something where pirating a game or emulating a game, is a little bit easier to do, and one that probably rubs a little less in your conscience. That's all fine and good. I agree with that. I don't think that necessarily has as much of an effect on games, except for maybe that people like me that would rather play Super Mario Brothers over the latest Call of Duty. And I know that makes me a criminal to many of you, and I'm sorry. But I'm just not that excited about Call of Duty, and I'd rather go back and play Mario Brothers a couple more times and just have fun and remember and relive the past. So as long as there's not another version of Mario Brothers to go and play, it makes sense for me to go and play the old version that I can no longer get. Although I did see it in a game store the other day in its full cartridge glory and thought about buying it just to have a nice cartridge of that. Because I think that would be cool. Anyway, so yeah, cool. So I think that's a very, very good point. Having those games that no longer make any money are interesting, but we've all noticed the pattern. And we mentioned this in the same Armchair Thinker podcast. The trend in gaming is also now to try to cash in on some of those older licenses, which many of you brought up, and I think it's a great concept. Their way of dealing with piracy is to go back and say make a Mega Man 9, so that they can continue to use Mega Man without having to really blow out a whole new concept for a whole new giant epic Mega Man game. They can go and just make basically a Mega Man 2 clone with the same experience, with the same kind of feel and the same mechanics, and it can be just as fun as Mega Man 2, although I don't think it really actually is. It's just as hard, though. And why not just do that? That'll keep people buying something at $10, $5, $15, that low price point, right? That's not $50 and $60 like other console and PC games. And hope that they download that. Now, I know on PC that's not nearly as common, but it does happen, right? I mean, look at a game like Braid, which was released for consoles, which did extremely well on the consoles. And look how well it did on the PC. It did very, very well. It was released on Steam and did very well on PC as well. Were people pirating it? You betcha they were pirating it. They were pirating it like crazy. But it still did very, very well. And maybe there's something to do about the experience and about something about the price point that made it worthwhile for people to do that. So the point is, another effect on the game industry is that things have definitely, in terms of pricing, it's made them rethink pricing. How can we try to combat piracy through better pricing, through better availability of our games through a lower price point. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, call me crazy. Okay, so the Beer Ninja, and I thought there were several tremendously good comments from the Beer Ninja this week. I want to say tremendous post. One of the ones I enjoyed the most, and I enjoyed all of them, but one of the ones I enjoyed the most reading through. Start off with this principle. Most people want to do the right thing and are basic and fair people. I could not agree more. I think that's absolutely 100% correct. You know, and by the way, I think that's true for a lot of things. But if you show, like, for Radiohead that released, it wasn't Hail to the Thief, was it? No, it was In Rainbows. That album was released completely as a pay-as-you-go, whatever you want to pay. If you want it for free, download it for free, because they thought it would kind of leverage and average out. And it turned out it didn't, okay? They didn't make a lot of money on that album. They didn't make the money that they probably should have made on that album. And now they're trying for a hybrid approach, which is you can buy a really nice version of the album for more money. You can buy a really cheap version of the album, as we all know albums. But see, guys, look, you know, one of the things that's really helped with music piracy is the fact that iTunes made songs so easy to get, really, really good versions, and really, really cheap. I mean, maybe not really, really cheap, but relatively cheap. You know, throwing things at a 99-cent price point for a song, I mean, that's actually more expensive than some albums were before. You know, if you bought like a box set or whatever, I mean, you pay $100. That's a lot of money, right? I mean, the point is, guys, you see how this gets played out. But Apple revolutionized the music industry because they said we just want to make it easy for people to download. Apple is now DRM free, by the way, and you know, we're going to give really, really good versions, you know, very superb quality of these songs, so that people will pay a premium to get it. And lo and behold, they absolutely have. No one's going to say Apple hasn't done a fantastic job revolutionizing the music business. So if most people want to do the right thing, then, you know, to some degree, that kind of makes Astolia's point that maybe we should just learn to deal with piracy better. However, I think we end up probably somewhere in the middle with Uwaru and saying, actually, you know, doesn't mean companies don't have the right to be able to protect what they're doing. It just means that maybe the protection mechanisms don't need to be so draconic and thick, right? All right. Drastic made the used game argument, which I think was repeated by several other people and had been mentioned before, but mentioned it in a way that I thought, you know, merited discussion. I've seen several articles about certain companies going after the used game market. They arbitrarily know what's going on with this. I don't think they think it's actually going to get anywhere. Look, guys, have you noticed recently, and I've noticed, maybe you guys haven't noticed it in your geography, in your part of the world, wherever you may be, but I've noticed an influx in used bookstores. Have you seen this? Now, does that mean that used books just became a commodity that they could actually make money on? No. No, it doesn't mean that. It means that somebody figured out how to market used bookstores, and culturally we were ready for used bookstores, and now they're like huge again. I mean, there are like 3 or 4 within 10 miles of where I live, and even just 3 years ago there were none. There was maybe one next to a college campus close by, right? So my point is, guys, book companies, publishing companies, who are the ones that make money in distribution, by the way, okay? They publish these books, these games, this music, these films, whatever you have, right? They get distribution rights, which are different than the film rights, which are different from, you know, the artistic license that they're buying, right? I mean, it's all these kinds of different costs that go on. And most people don't understand what kind of costs go into making a game, by the way. I think most of you do, which is good. But most people that like to make arguments about this stuff have no concept of that. They think it's just 5 guys eating Cheetos, right? It doesn't work that way. But I don't think anybody that is sane. So the used game market is a market with its own dynamics in and of itself, right? It's in and of itself a completely different market that everybody can appreciate and understand. If I buy a game at $60 and I play it for a while and then I bring it to GameStop, they become basically a broker. They're a broker. They make it easy for me to trade it in for cash value, for a little cash value, and then somebody else comes in and they maximize their investment by making a few more bucks selling a used copy. The game company still made their money with the $60 investment from when I purchased it, right? And if their argument is, well, we're not making money on used games, then that means that their premium is not where it needs to be. If they're losing potential profit from that or potential revenue from it, right? Then they need to have a bigger premium on their product. And if people don't buy it, then what is it really worth? And we get into another conversation of market dynamics. My point is, GameStop has positioned itself, and there are other companies. I was in a game store the other day that is not a GameStop, and I quite frankly enjoyed it. You break yourself of all the tyranny of all the rules, and you just find this really cool hole-in-the-wall GameStop. A lot of used bookstores are selling video games now, by the way, guys. So that's another great thing to do. Go in there and say, hey, you guys have this game. I'd love to have it. You can find some diamonds in the rough at those places, and I think that's fantastic. But the used game phenomenon is a separate market in and of itself. And GameStop makes more of its money through new game sales and pre-purchases and stuff like that, because people know that they can get it than anywhere else, right? Than in accessories. Now, used games is good because the market is so powerful, right? We have a lot of people with video games out there, and they can actually go and trade in these games and make money on them, and it seems like a natural fit, right? Absolutely, no problem. I just think that the market is so good that everybody starts to think, maybe we should have a cut in this. And I'm not sure video game companies have any claim to that, and I don't think piracy necessarily feeds that bug. I think it's just because the used game market is so huge. And I'll say this too, I don't think there's any merit to the idea that game companies see people that buy used games as pirates. Those things are not equivalent. I think you would be very, very hard-pressed to find a developer or even a distributor that would make that claim. People that buy used games are buying them legally through legal channels, and they should be able to go ahead and do that. Now, the margin that GameStop makes on a used game versus a new game is tremendous, right? You guys understand that, right? They make a lot more money on a per dollar basis on a used game than they do on a brand new game because the margins are so incredibly bigger. So whenever there's a market, whenever people are making money, everybody else wants to figure out how they can fit into it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So the used game argument is there, but let's not mistake that with piracy. And then Tammy John mentioned the demo idea. So almost every company out there that offers a PC game, because this was initially only a PC game phenomenon, it spread to console games over the years, was the demo idea. Give you a piece of what you can have here for free. Don't have to pay anything for it. Very limited functionality or limited usage or whatever the case might be. And then you have what we all know now on Xbox Live is unlock full game, right? Go get the rest of the game and be able to play it. And I think, by and large, this still works, guys. Somebody goes out there, they see what they want, they play the demo, and it becomes fun. It's something, wow, this is really cool. I can get into this, right? So I think the demo phenomenon has helped, but I think piracy, so I think, in other words, if we're going to talk about effects, which is what the question is, then piracy really doesn't affect the way demos get released, because demos cost money too, guys. Don't ever forget that. That costs money for game companies to release a demo. They're doing it as a marketing initiative. So if the marketing initiative if the marketing bump they get from a demo is going to be the same as the marketing bump they get from, say, a pirated game, would you still be producing demos? I know as a company I wouldn't be, because then I could just make the same amount of money, get the same bump, spending less money. Makes sense to me. But I think the demo phenomenon definitely works, and I appreciate you guys bringing that up. Now I'm going to get into my thoughts on this. I've kind of baked them into some of the things I've talked about, but let's